All right, Tim, would you like to introduce yourself to the people on the panel and to the podcast here?
All right. Hey, everyone. My name's Tim. I've spent 13 years in the military. During that time, I've amassed a portfolio of about $1.3 million, and that's split amongst single family, multifamily, short-term and long-term rentals. And I am venturing off into vacation homes. On the professional side of the house, I started out enlisted as an IT nerd, and then I got a few degrees, all for free, a few certifications for free, courtesy of the taxpayers' dollar. And then I was able to transfer into hospital administration, specializing in informatics. And I was able to commission 2 times and about to be a third time because, why have one? And then also build a personal a personal professional brand as well. So yeah, that's a very short introduction of me and who I am and what I do.
I like it. It's short, but it's a lot to take in right there. And what were you like growing up as a kid? Like, what was your environment like that you were raised in?
So growing up as a kid, I did 2 things. I played a ton of video games, an absolute ton of video games. And then I was also a very avid martial artist. I've been fighting for about 20 years at this point. I'm on a forced hiatus because someone scooped my eyeball out in a fight a little while ago.
Oh,
Um, but yeah, growing up, a lot of martial arts, a lot of sports, and a lot of video games. Summers were spent at a lake, and that's where the nexus of my attraction towards real estate came from, because I used to walk up and down the beach, and there was a lot of looking at the homes and visualizing at that time just what the return of investment would be, how much would it cost to operate or to renovate, how much someone would pay per month or week for that. So the real estate bug was definitely there at a very early age.
hmm. And talk about what video game did you like, and what sport? What is this? Fight. What martial art did you study? I guess
So
practice.
the video game for me is Halo. I absolutely loved Halo. I'd
Ah,
go over to my buddy's house, with my Xbox and like 4 controllers, and we would all system link together, and we'd have like 8 to 12 people there just tearing it up, having a blast. It really brought people together. And looking back on things now that it's a few decades behind us, like it was definitely some of the best of times. And then for martial arts, it was actually a combination. So it was MMA, but
yeah.
primarily it was boxing, kickboxing, and Muay Thai. Very striking heavy. So we had like Saturday morning boxing classes and Friday night grappling classes and fighters class on Tuesdays and Thursdays, but then kickboxing on Mondays and Wednesdays. Um, so lots of striking and a little bit of a hodgepodge of everything.
Yeah. And what got you all into like martial arts? Was it your parents, or was it like your choice preference?
So no, when I started, playing intramural sports, I started out with football, and I was like, yeah, I'm the toughest kid here. I was a pudgy little kid. I had some weight to lose, and don't get me wrong, I have some weight to lose right now because I'm I just got back from 6 months worth of being out of action for a bit, between getting hit by cars and get my eyes scooped out and all this other silliness. 2022 has not been kind. But my sister started martial arts, and I was like 12 years old at the time. And me and her were gonna arm wrestle, and we grabbed arms, we started to move, and I was like, oh my god, like this is tough. This is not good. I still beat her. I had to kick her in the shin in order to win, but I won, and that's all that mattered. But after that, like that same day, I went to my dad and I'm like, I want to join martial arts because she almost beat me in arm wrestling, and that's not cool. Um, so a little bit of sibling rivalry is actually what started that, and I was hooked. Because the amount of drive and determination that you need, to throw like your 500th punch in a row, or someone's trying to knock your face off, and all you're doing is just trying to survive. Um, there's nothing like that in the world, and that really brings a team and a group of people together. So at first it was the internal drive, but then it became also the community. That's what kept me going.
Yeah. What if for anyone that's interested in doing like martial arts, what would you recommend?
So I would recommend two different martial arts. Stay away from the taekwondo silliness, because that's a sport, and you have to identify that that is a sport, and that won't save you if in case you actually have to use it in real life. Um, but what I would say is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is absolutely amazing if you can understand that that is also a sport. In real life, you would never go to the ground, right? The first person who goes to the ground is dead normally in
Yeah.
in a real life altercation, because what does the ground look like? Is there rocks on the ground? Is there rocks? Is there seashells? Is it concrete and you're just going to tear your back up? Or when you fall down, are you going to hit your head on something? Like you don't know. And in a fight, it happens instantaneously. You need to maximize your mobility, and when you go to the ground, that's all taken away. So you want to have that interlocking ability, but to complement that, I would also say, not jujitsu, Muay Thai. Muay Thai is art of the eight limbs. It's basically kickboxing with knees and elbows. That's what it is. Because in order for someone to get close to you, to get you in a headlock, or to hold on to you, well, you could kick them, you could knee them, you could punch them, and you can elbow them,
Hmm.
and then they are in grabbing distance. So that balance between the two, I find, is ideal.
Okay, nice. I like that. I was thinking of BJJ, and I was like, I never thought of doing like Muay Thai though. I know Devin here, he does a lot of Muay Thai, and he loves it.
Hell yeah,
Yeah.
that's what's up,
Yeah,
man.
man. Yeah.
Well, I mean, because like Muay Thai operates in the clinch all the time. You
Hmm.
just lock up, and then you just take your knee and embed it into their spine. It's fantastic.
God.
Um, so,
And
so
growing up to like 18, right? Did you make what was your decision at 18? Because a lot of 18-year-olds, they don't even know what to do.
oh, I still didn't know what to do when I was 18 years
Oh
old.
yeah.
But I joined the military when I was 17 years old, and I originally wanted to be special forces, so I went to Air Force Combat Controllers. They were going to give me like a $30,000 signing bonus or something like that once I passed the pipeline and all this. Went through boot camp, and I passed. What was it? Um, I was in there like in doc and course, going through everything, and then we got to water confidence. And water confidence is a very fancy way of saying you're going to drown. and, and they drowned me a lot. And I grew up on a lake, so I was always in the water. I was swimming out. I was a fish, but I never practiced drowning, and I wasn't comfortable drowning. And like when I popped up, I was like, "Hooyah, Sarge, I quit," because screw that noise. Um, because I don't know about you guys, but I like breathing.
Yeah.
It's one of my top 5 favorite activities to do. I then had to fill out a dream sheet, and there's a bunch of stuff I didn't know. And so I started filling out a bunch of things that sounded cool. There was a bunch of medical silliness, and then there was a bunch of IT stuff on there. I'm like, well, I like video games. That's kind of IT. I'm on computers a lot. Like, sure, I'll do IT. How hard can it be? And I got like my 6th choice, and everyone was like, "Oh, that's such a good choice." I had no idea what it was. Then they sent me off to Keesler to be a water walker, which is a technical controller. And it's basically, we specialized in long haul communications. So think satellites, think transatlantic cables, fiber optics, AM, FM radios, things like that.
Yeah.
Not necessarily the radio; it's the modulation of the signal that connects the two together. So very techy silliness with that. And then from there, I just started working and trying to perfect the craft that I was given.
Nice. So what kind of education were you doing as an enlisted soldier in the Air Force?
So when I enlisted, I'm not gonna lie, like I was a punk of punks. I was actually about to get kicked out of the Air Force.
God.
Yo, dude, it was. I learned the hard way. So I was legitimately about to get kicked out. Between in the Air Force, you have to pass certain tests to show your proficiency. I'm a dumb fuck, and I failed like my first 1 or 2 times of trying to do this. I'm like, I just don't get it. Um, and then my mentor really, he grabbed, took me under his wing, and he pulled my head out of my ass. Like the thing just like it was a very painful growth time for me because I was a young, immature punk who thought I knew everything. It was very clear that I did not, and I had to, straighten the fuck out. So I did. And after I passed my CDCs, it's career development courses to prove that I know my job. Once I was able to do that, that was able to build up momentum for momentum for education, and also momentum just to learn and just to be a sponge.
Mhm.
So I instantly went out and got my EMT certification. And then right from that EMT certification, I went and got my bachelor's degree in health sciences. And then hot off that heels, or while I was doing that, actually, I also got one of my IT certifications, CompTIA Security Plus
Yeah.
certification. So at that point in time, I went from almost getting kicked out in a failed marriage to 90% through a degree and two certifications before my first deployment, and that was within 3 years of getting to my first duty station. So a lot of transformation, a lot of pain, but also a lot of growth within those 3 years worth of time. And then after that, or during that deployment, I finished up my bachelor's degree, and I was halfway through with my master's before I had to go back from my deployment. But ultimately, I finished my enlistment time with my associate degree, my bachelor's degree, and my master's degree, my project management certification, my EMT certification, and my CompTIA Security Plus certification.
Wow, that's a lot. And what made you want to go to the officer route?
At first, it was the paycheck, but yeah, a little bit more than that. As enlisted man, I carried a chip on my shoulder. Like I really did. There was a bunch of officers who were like two years older than me. And they were in IT, but they didn't know anything about IT. One of my officers, don't get me wrong, I absolutely love him to death. He wrote a letter of recommendation for me, and like if I'm half the officer he is, I'll be doing okay. But he had a degree in music. I was like, how are you in IT? And how are you trying to tell me what to do? And so I really had a chip on my shoulder because I had degrees and certifications in IT, and I could tell you all about, the like fiber optic propagation, theory and methodology and whatnot, and how the light in a specific type of light goes throughout the core cladding and the jacket of the fiber optic cables, and like what multi-mode versus single mode or a graded index does. Like I can nerd out with that, but they didn't know, and I it really didn't sit well with me. I'm like, well, if I want to be better, I have to do it. So I got my degrees, and I submitted for my commission. I always had a calling for healthcare, because as a martial artist, I'm like, I could break the body, take something that bends and make it not bend, or something that is supposed to bend and just bend until it snaps.
Yeah.
It happens. But I always liked anatomy, physiology, kinesiology, things like that. But my degrees were more like in IT and administration, so I had to have these two things who are independent of each other merged together somehow. And one of my bosses, when I was in Colorado, he's like, hey, you should look at this thing. It's called the MSC, the Medical Service Corps. He's like, I don't know anything about it, but it kind of sounds ishy, what it seems like. And they are direct commission officers, just like, doctors, lawyers, JAGs, chaplains, things like that. And I applied. First time they said no, get fucked. And I'm kind of hard-headed, so I was like, no, I'm gonna apply again. And then I got in into the reserves. So that's how I came about to have my first commission at the end of my first enlistment with 3 certs and 3 degrees.
Wow. And during your time as an officer, what did you see that that you would like that you didn't expect as an officer?
So I've been an officer in two different branches. I was a officer in the Air Force Reserves and an all officer in the Army active duty with the 82nd. Yay. And the thing that I didn't realize that, they didn't really prepare me. I'm used to working with professionals. I'm used to working with people of like mind in the medical field. Everyone's there for a reason, because if we're not doing what we gotta do, people get hurt or people can get hurt. On the civilian side, we are, all of us have multiple degrees and we are all passionate and professional when we go about, doing what we gotta do. But as an officer, like my first day on the in the reserves, like I had to read an award for someone because I was an executive officer, so I was presenting an award and like being the MC for someone, and then they got kicked out for heroin.
What the hell?
Details. What's going on? And then on the on the Army side, like I had to explain to people that it's not okay to sleep in the middle of the day, like when you should be working, or like, no, you actually, can't assault a minor. That's a thing, and we have to have this conversation. Or that it's also not okay to have $1.24 in your account. As as a 32-year-old man with children, like it's your responsibility to, be a good steward of your own money. So it's those things that they didn't really prepare me for, which is fine because thankfully, like that's why we lean on our NCOs, and they're able to help out with that because some of those issues is something like I wouldn't even consider because it's just not something you do. But different strokes for different folks, I
Yeah.
guess.
So what's your advice to those that are trying to join the military? They don't know which branch, they don't know like should they go enlisted, should they go officer, they don't know what kind of education they're trying to take out of it. What would you recommend?
I would always say have the long goal in mind. Don't try to go in, oh, I'm going to be, super high testosterone person. I'm going to, kick down doors and, sling lead down range. Like at the end of the day, no one cares, bro. But have a job that will set you up for when you're out of the military. So like for me, I was very fortunate that, as an IT nerd, I had a job in which, you know, six figures when I became a civilian was relatively easy, just because find anything that doesn't have IT. Nowadays it's impossible. So there's a lot of demand for it, and being quasi skilled in it is definitely something that you want. So find a transferable skill or a transferable MOS or job that will have that transition in the military to outside the military into the civilian world, because eventually it's going to happens to every military member. So keep the end in mind. That's the hardest thing.
Wow. Okay. And what got you into the whole real estate thing as well? I
I'm
know
lazy.
you said
Yeah, no, I'm lazy, and that's why I always wanted to own real estate. And I always thought homes were the coolest thing in the world, and oftentimes I actually went out on a few dates where we just walked around the city looking at real estate and looking at homes. I'm actually going on a date next week, and we're gonna be touring homes together.
wow.
Hey, like I'm gonna tour homes anyway. Why not? Have a tax write-offable date. But I always wanted one, and I always wanted to grow something of my own. And real estate seemed like a way where I can have efficient money. And what I mean by that is I can use like a VA home loan, and I could buy a duplex with that, or some kind of small residential multifamily home. I could live in that unit, rent out, the bottom unit, and then get a roommate in there as well. So I won't pay anything for a home, but then I get to live for free or live for profit. And while I get to deduct taxes or deduct power and water and electric and depreciate the home on my taxes, and then I also get to force appreciation on the home, while living for free. Like the math just boggles my mind. And once I was able to learn that, and like I read that through like Mr. Money Mustache. Um, so once I had, that long interest in it since I was a child, to the math when I was ready to take the knowledge in, I was like, oh, well, damn, like this is the way to go. And ever since then, it's just been a snowball rolling downhill, kind of picking up momentum. I went like I bought a duplex, and I bought a vacation home, then I bought a single family, then another triplex, and another single family, and now I'm working on a small apartment complex. Whether or not it goes through, we'll see. But it's just building. That's all within the past like 5 years. With
Wow.
I spent a total of 20 grand, and that's just because I deployed and saved my per diem, and then that's where that went.
So
So
you spent about around 20 grand in total for all 5 of those properties.
yep. So I
Wow.
spent 20 grand in my real estate portfolio is like 1.1 million right now. So significant return of return, cash on cash return. Now I don't own it all outright yet. Nor and I personally am of the mindset that you shouldn't own it all outright, because now you just have excess equity sitting there when you can utilize that.
Yeah.
But that's a strategy conversation more than a how
Okay.
conversation.
And what are your ways of like getting all these properties? We're using the Burr method, and I'm guessing you were house hacking as well.
Yep. So I've my first home was a house hack, and it was a lit it, it was a live and upgrade. So my first home was a duplex. Um, I moved into the upper unit, which had a lot more work that had to happen with it. So I didn't know what I was doing at the time. I had a Gerber and a sledgehammer, and I'm like, I'm gonna reno this entire thing. Apparently you need like a drill and like nails with the hammer. Like I didn't know. But I learned on I was watching a ton of YouTube, and I got some of my other buddies together who they were relatively handy. I'm like, hey man, like I'll buy a pizza and beer. Help me with this, please, because I don't know what I'm doing. But I bought that. They actually gave me $6,000 at close. So they paid me to move into my own home. Like, yes, please. So they paid me 6 grand to move into my own home. I got a roommate, and I kept the tenant downstairs. And I upgraded the entire upper unit. The rent on that went from $800 for the upper unit to $1,300 when I left, and I got to live in it for free. Like it was crazy. And I'm not a big fan of selling homes, just because my investing horizon hasn't been that long to where it's able to mature to that stage. I would much rather have the equity pay down than do a cash out refi, and I'm actually in the process of that right now. Doing a cash out refi and take that equity and buy some more homes with it. So that was my first home that I was able to do. The second one is a long-term, off market deal that I had and I secured, and that's the vacation home, which we're actually starting demolition next year on. But all of my other ones, well, I can't say all my other ones. Two of my other ones were VA home loans. And then a third one was just a conventional loan that I went in. I actually bought the home when I was in Syria. So I didn't even see it. I had my realtor walk through with her camera and videotape everything. And that was actually a $30,000 lesson I learned the hard way. Now I'm building a presentation for that. How to not waste 30 grand.
How'd you waste that 30 grand? What'd you do?
So I bought it sight unseen. Like obviously we did all of our due diligence, or at least I thought I did. But the owner at that time cooked his books, and did a ton of deferred maintenance. And when I say a ton of deferred maintenance, he duct taped the roof so that it would stop leaking. Like he didn't even like duct tape and then put tar on it. He just slapped some duct tape on. He's like, I'm good. ooh, I have some harsh feelings towards that guy. And he just threw anyone into the triplex. Well, one of the guys was a squatter, or a squatter came and chased the guy out. And then I didn't find out until it was after the trespassing time. So because of the COVID eviction moratoriums, I couldn't kick out this dude who was dealing drugs. And I was like, oh my God. It was absolutely crazy. And it was a long, painful process because we had to wait till the eviction moratorium went through, and all that time, like I was not getting rent for that.
Mhm.
So by the time they left, because we had to wait, then we had to evict him, and then when we went in, he took a hatchet to every square inch of the home, and like I have pictures to prove this. Like they ripped the door off of the oven. It was insane, crazy. It was to clean it out cost $5,000. It was, and at that point, in for a penny, in for a pound. I was like, oh my God, like what am I getting myself into? Like maybe I'm not as cool as I thought I was. Uh, but we totally renovated that unit. We upped the rent by like $300 or $400, and now that one triplex is making $1,600 in profit every month.
Wow.
Which is not bad considering I only paid no. Well, at the end of the day, I paid $30,000 for it. It was painful, but it taught me a very valuable lesson of when they say, when you're doing your due diligence and you say, hey, give me your profit and loss statement, your P&L, and your rent roll. Like they've given you the answers. The very next question you ask, and what I learned by paying $30,000 for it is, cool. Now show me the rent, or show me the transactions in your bank statements that prove this.
Mhm.
Because you say you're making this, cool. Now do it. Prove it to me. And if not, then that shows that they're missing they're missing their rent, or they are a difficult tenant, or they don't have, in some cases, leases, which is insane. So that was a very painful lesson that I learned. Now, don't get me wrong, like the place is nice now. We're just finishing up work on the outside of the home. We're value adding to it. So we're putting in washers and dryers, which that's going to increase the rent. We're putting in storage units down, so that's going to increase the rent as well. And we're
Nice.
making the place really nice. That way people are proud to be there, and they're going to pay more for it. So small steps. It took a little bit longer than what I personally wanted, because it's been about, what was it, 2021? Yeah, so it's a year and a half worth of a lot of pain to get there, but thankfully we're there now. So
Now that's
that
doing
that
good.
was yeah, that's $30,000 lesson for you.
We got Sami here with a question. Go ahead.
Hi. So you said what you would have done differently was ask for the rent, the revenue from the rent, and then a bank statement proving it, right?
Yes. So whenever you're going in for an investment, one of the two things you want to ask for is the profit and loss statement, and that's where they show their net operating income, their maintenance, and how much that they're paying for maintenance. And if you see that maintenance, normally you want to go back a few years, and if you see their maintenance dip all of a sudden, that's an indicator that they're deferring maintenance. They're pushing off maintenance to try to make that profit and loss seem a little bit better. Don't be fooled by that. Now, so you want to have all the leases. You want to have all of the expenses and that P&L statement. Then you say, okay, let me see, the bank transactions that prove this. Because if not, then that's another discussion of, oh yeah, apartment A hasn't been paying their rent for the past 4 months. But if they were, you'd be getting this cool, awesome, return of investment, or this cool, awesome cash flow. But it's not there. And that gives you a certain amount of negotiating power to where you can tell them that, okay, cool, now you're going to evict them, or now you're going to, tell them that, hey, their lease isn't due, so that when or their lease is ended, so that way when you take over, they're already out.
Mhm.
Or you can negotiate that down, because the last thing you want to do is inherit a problem that they're trying to give off.
And Tim, what are some tools that you used, or like how did you analyze these deals or find these deals in a way?
So to find the deals, all but one of these deals I actually found just through Zillow. So I used Zillow, I used Trulia, was it Trulia? Yeah, and Realtor.com. So they were all on market. The only off-market deal that I got was a lakefront property, which is that vacation home that I'm working on right now. Other than that, they're all on the MLS, very easy to find. What I do when I see the property go up for sale, for me, I like multifamilies because it has built-in redundancy. Where if one of the person, like I have with the triplex, a third of my rent wasn't coming in. Well, that's cool because I still have 2/3 of the rent that was coming in, and that was enough to keep that property afloat. So I wasn't losing money, but I also wasn't making any money. Versus if I have a single family home and I'm trying to do that, and one person doesn't pay my rent, well, now I'm down 100%. And sometimes that one month's worth of skipped rent is enough to crater someone, especially if they're new and they're just learning as they're going, like I was. Like, yeah, it's enough to hurt. So what I do is I take say a duplex I found, and they'll tell you through that P&L statement how much they should be, if they're telling the truth, how much their rent is. Then normally what I do is I pull up city data and I look at what the average rent is for that zip code. Normally you can go a little bit higher, or you want to identify things within that asset, within that duplex, that you can value add to. Can you just install some new cabinets and countertops, make it seem a little bit nicer? That way you can move it from maybe a C plus home into a B home. Throw in some glass bathrooms, where you have that, as opposed to like a shower curtain, a nice glass panel. I like some of that. And one of my investment mottos is I will only invest in a place that I feel comfortable living
Yeah.
in. Because ultimately, if everything goes to hell in a handbasket, I might have to move into one of these things. And quite frankly, I am targeting myself as a prime investor, or as a prime tenant, because, well, I know me better than anyone else. So why not invest in like-minded individuals?
Yeah. And a quick question that someone might have is, how do you find the rent rate or of that area? Did you say you use the city, or what did you
Yeah,
use?
so there's a website called City Data, and City Data will just break down medium income, medium population age and growth for the past 10 years, 5 years, X amount of months. And those are all things that you want to be looking at, because if for the past 10 years, and I know I'm going off on a little bit of a tangent, in the past 10 years, if a city is declining in population and their population is also aging, well, now you might want to change your investment approach to maybe put in a little bit wider doors. That way, people with walkers, it's a little bit easier to get through, or handles in the bathroom. That way they can hold and sit down. So it gives you insight for you to operate on. Now, if there's more younger population, that you can change that up to a little bit more high tech features, such as hey, free Wi-Fi or security cameras, or like a Yale lock that they can use. Like one of my single family homes, like it comes with a Yale lock, and it's targeted towards younger people. Technically it's targeted for military, junior enlisted, starting out with a small family. It's a 3-bed 2-bath home, 5 minutes away from Fort Bragg, but it has all of the IT stuff already built into it. That way it's just super easy because it's targeting younger people.
Yeah. I'm looking at the website, City Data, as well.
Mhm.
I'm blown because I never seen this website before, and I'm like, how do you even use this?
That website is so value added. It also, if my memory serves correctly, it also has crime statistics on it, and normally I try to stay away from the crime areas.
Yeah,
Um,
it's this website here, right?
let me see, city data. Yep. And you
Okay.
can use any zip code that you want for that, and it'll categorize all the data for it. It is truly wonderful, and I use this a lot.
Wow. Okay. So Fayetteville right here.
Yep,
Wow.
it gives you your medium income. It gives you your target demographics, your medium age, whether the population is increasing or decreasing. And normally, if you take that medium income and divide that by 3, that's approximately how much rent you should be charging for the average person within that zip code. Now, obviously, if it's a 1 bed, 1 bath, and I think they also have estimated mortgages and rent on there as well, or average, because those are other features and tools I look at.
Nice. Okay. I like this. I like this. Do you have any other neat tools that you use? Because you're the first person I ever heard say this tool.
Oh, dude, this is like that's the main thing, man. Um, I use bigger pockets calculators for, like, if I am trying to estimate repair costs, my ARV values, my after repair value. If I'm trying to estimate repairs, I go to there and I use their calculators, or my cash on cash return. Like I said, I'm looking at some multifamilies next week, and I was giving a presentation to some of my investors, and I was like, hey, like, here's 2 possible options. One is like a one has an 8% cash on cash return. The other one has a 12% cash on cash return. Here's what I like about this one. Here's what I like about this one, and here's why. And I detail it all out. So a net operating income cash on cash return calculator is fantastic for that.
Okay.
Definitely use it.
And let's say someone, I get this a lot, right? They're like, hey, I want to get into real estate. I only have 10 grand. What should I do? Well, what would you say to them, Tim?
Well, so for me, it's not the amount of money that's all that important. Yes, it plays a factor, but what is their position in life, and what are they willing to sacrifice? That's a question. Because I'm putting on my Mr. Money Mustache hat for a moment, and if you've never looked at Mr. Money Mustache, highly recommend it. It's written by a guy named Pete. He is the man. He retired when he was like 35 or something stupid like that. He was a software engineer, but he biked to work. He ate like oats and ramen noodles. Like, he went ham. You don't necessarily have to go that ham, but there's a lot of fundamental things that's very value added for that. If you go on his website, click start here and just read that and just take it from there. That I read that while I was getting my master's degree when I was living in Japan, and I actually had some competitions with some of my enlisted buddies who they actually became investors on this new property that we're going into. But we had a game of who can save more, on a ratio basis. Because I think I was E5 at the time, and they were like E4. But who could save more? And then, like, we buy each other lunch. Whoever saved more, the loser had to buy him lunch, or just something silly like that. But it got you thinking into that mindset. And the reason why I bring that up and have that small deviation is because if they are willing to move and live closer to where they are working, and if they are utilizing like an FHA loan or a VA home loan, that will fundamentally change the name of the game for that.
Yeah.
For the military folk, if you don't know, or you're considering going into the military, after you serve a certain amount of time, and I forget how long that's, I think it's 3 years, you get a VA home loan, which means that you get to pay, as long as you qualify for a loan, because a VA home loan is a type of loan. You still have to qualify and actually have a decent credit score.
Mhm.
If you have a credit score of 300, sorry, you ain't qualifying. So you have to get your house in order first. But once you do qualify, and it's a normal like 670 on up, you'll be able to qualify for a decent rate loan. But the VA home loan requires 0 money down. While that is absolutely fantastic, if you're on a planning perspective, there's a lot of leverage there. But for zero money down, which means you just pay the closing costs, which you can also roll into the loan, which means you just pay the inspection and sometimes like a termite or flea inspection or a bug inspection type deal, for less than $2,000, you can get a home through a VA home loan, and that's up to like $480,000. So that 10 grand, too easy. Now, say you don't want to do the military, right? It's not your cup of tea. It's not your speed. Hey, to each their own. I don't. There's a lot of people who don't want to join the military, and quite frankly, I don't blame them. You can also have a FHA loan, on the Federal Housing Authority loan, and that requires the same exact level of inspection as a VA home loan. For that, you only have to put down 3.5%. So say you are trying to buy a $200,000 home, that down payment would only be 7 grand. If my math checks out in my head, that means $7,000 can buy you $200,000 duplex, triplex, quadplex. Cool. Now you rent that out. You live in that because that's a speculation for both types of loans. You just have to live in that for a year. After that year, you could turn that into a 100% rental and just do your due. But you will have to pay, a little bit of closing cost and some PMI, and that's private mortgage insurance. Is just the bank's way of saying you didn't get the standard 20% down payment, so to make us feel better, we're going to charge you a little bit more. That's pretty much all that is. As long as you're running the numbers and you factor that in, and you're still coming out ahead, you're golden. So that $10,000, there's 2 loan vehicles right there. Super simple, super easy.
Nice. And what's the hardest thing that you found in real estate?
The hardest thing I found in real estate is probably, dealing with contractors. I have some fantastic contractors, but at the same time, a good contractor, they're hard to get. So sometimes we have to circle back 1 or 2 times to get to them. So getting a contractor that's that is available to do the job at that time. I always anticipate on paying a little bit more than what's originally quoted, especially with these very volatile times that we live in right now. But that for me is the hardest. Now, as a long distance investor, because I have some homes in New York, some homes in North Carolina. Like I bought one when I was in Syria. I rely on my network. The second hardest thing is finding a good team. And that's critical. You have to find a good lawyer, you have to find a good real estate agent, and you have to find, in my case, a good property manager. I've been blessed to have some fantastic property managers, but I had to burn through a few because they just weren't delivering what I was expecting and what we agreed upon. You date your tenants, but you really marry your landlord as far as like a relationship perspective goes.
Yeah,
Obviously, you don't
I like that.
you don't do that literally, but I can kick a tenant out, but for me to rip my property manager out of my business systems, it's a little bit heavier of a lift.
Yeah.
So you really want to make sure that you are copacetic with each other.
Nice. And what would you recommend for those that have like a high DTI ratio? And a DTI is like you have a lot of debt to income ratio. So what would you recommend for that? Those who want to lower that, and they're like, hey, I work at this job, I make $60,000 or less, but this is what I'm doing, but I'm trying to lower it down. Is there any way I can do that? Because I own like 4 houses, but I'm trying to get more than that.
Man, you are explaining the very issue I'm going through right now. I just got out of the military for the 3rd time. Is that the third? First? Yeah, it is the 3rd time. And I moved up to New York, and I was trying really hard to get a loan, and well, I just couldn't get a loan. And I was, my DTI was like in the 70s, and I was trying to explain to the loan agents, I was like, look, I run a very nice ship. Like here's my, my P&L statements, and like everything's in the green. We're going good. Like there's no reason why I shouldn't. And they're like, yeah, we agree. But if you own a home, we will take the debt into consideration. But if you're using that as an investment, it has to, what was the term that they used? It wasn't nested. It was, it had to be seasoned for 2 years before they'll count the income. And I was like, well, this is bullshit. You'll count the debt, but not the income. I was very irked by it. But once again, it was a learning opportunity, and I knew that was a thing. But it was never really a thing because my numbers always worked out. But now I'm getting to the level where I can't, in my personal name, do all of this. So it depends on what debt we're talking about, right? Is it debt from, hey, I got a bunch of, homes that I bought, 5 homes in the past year, and they're all cranking numbers out, and they're all in the black, they're rocking and rolling. Well, give it a year to season if you have that time or wherewithal. That way that income does start to be factored in. Or open up a business account, a business, an LLC, and you're going to have to refinance and commercial loans, because any loan under an LLC is going to be a commercial loan. Those are at a higher rate. Normally it's on a 15 to 20 year payment, with a balloon at the end, with a forced refinance in 5 years, which isn't really ideal. I was very fortunate to find one with a 30-year fixed, but the rate's higher, and I'm jumping up, from like a 3% personal, which, I'll take it. One of them's even like in like 2.1%, which is fantastic. But like,
Wow.
I'm going to like a 7 now. I'm like, oh my god. So like that hurts like my soul a little bit, but at the same time, it's better serving the purpose because I'm taking all that debt off of my personal name. Now, if that debt is for a stupid ass car, or for, an insane credit card limit because, you like to eat out a lot, and it's consumer debt, stop that shit. Eat beans, eat rice, eat oats, eggs, bare minimum, and aggressively pay that off.
Oh yeah.
Aggressively hack into that consumer debt. Like I have a little bit of a car note for the car that I'm in right now. I got in a car accident. I had to get a new car. But I am hammering the thing out because I don't want that debt. That's not the debt I want. The debt I want is mortgages. So aggressively take care of that. That would be the very first thing I say if it's consumer debt. If you have a ton of mortgages, consider putting that into an LLC, and then obviously run it like a business.
Yeah.
Because if you take real estate or finance and you consider it a hobby, then you're kind of going to get hobby returns. Nobody accidentally, becomes extremely successful. That's not how it is. But if you run your business like a business, then you're going to get business-like returns. Because at the end of the day, unless you're non-for-profit, the whole idea is to make money.
Yeah. Because I remember my car broke down too, right? And
Oh no.
I was like, hey, I have to get a new car. I didn't want to spend this much on this. Like, this is a really shitty car, right? 2007 Grand Cherokee. And I was like, man, they were like, oh, it's gonna cost $2,000, right? I'm like, to repair it. I'm like, shit. So the next day I went out and I bought a 2022 Corolla, right? New and all that. And I'm like, dude, this is a liability here. And I'm like,
Yep.
so I went back to the old car and was like, wait a minute. They haven't really, I was asking questions like, why is this $2,000, right? I'm like, well, this. I'm like, are you sure? Can they check again? They're like, well, we can check, but that's gonna cost. You know what? I'm like, how about you just replace the tire, because I think it might be this. And I'm like, all right. So the whole cost was $200 and it was fixed. So my old car is now fixed. I'm like, God, okay, I still have my car and I still have this new car. And I'm like, man, it's still a liability. So what should I do? So what I did is I made it into an asset. I turned that into a Turo, right?
Yeah.
I was like, okay, but I'm like, I can't do this because I'm in the military, right? I can't, like, it's a business, right? So what I did was I partnered up with somebody, and he is in Charlotte, And what he does is that he's right next to the airport. So he gets 25%, I get 75%. And all I want is to make sure I break even, right? Make sure I break
Mhm.
even, and I'm still profiting $700 off that still, even the
Yeah, buddy.
75%. I'm like,
That's
whoa.
awesome.
And I also saw a second benefit of it because I've never insurance, I'm like, okay. I never had my own personal car insurance. And it's
Mhm.
like that's like just like credit. You need to start
Yeah.
early so that whenever it comes down to like let's say you're 30 years old and you need to get another vehicle, your insurance
Mhm.
rate is gonna go down too. So
Yep.
I always recommend for all 18-year-olds to start your credit right away. And
Yes.
that can get you farther than you think because like you probably know there's a bunch of like people that are in the military, 24 years old, 25, doesn't have credit still. And they're just like, why would I need it? I could just buy a car with cash.
Yep. And another thing that that is expanded upon. It's not just, oh, if when you're 18, get a credit card. Obviously, do that.
Yeah.
Because you, at some point in time, you're not gonna pay for a home in cash.
Mhm.
Not unless you go find a foreclosed home that that's a shitter and that you're gonna fix up yourself. But if you are truly planning a family and you want generational wealth and you want to set your kids up for success, right? Here's 3 things you can do very easily. 1, make them a right when they're born, make them on your credit card, like a co-signer, a co-owner of that credit card.
Yeah.
Now you have to pay it off. You have to be responsible. I am hoping that anyone who's listening to this is responsible, and that's what they're thinking. But what that does is that starts building their credit from the time that they are a child, 2 years old, all the way up till they're 18. So now they're starting life out with damn near a perfect credit score.
Mhm.
That that would have saved me so much in interest. And also it would save me when I'm also shopping for a home. Second thing that you can do is right when they turn, of working age, you can make them an independent contractor and you can actually pay them a normal independent contractor's worth of work, $12,000 tax free per year. And if you do that, then they could put that into a 401k or a Roth IRA. Sorry. Because now time in the market is the bigger factor than timing the market. So now if you do that from when they're 12 years old, because you're like, hey, guess what? You're now the trash guy. You're now the maintenance guy. You're the groundskeeper.
Mhm.
And you pay them fair market rate, up, and they'd be an independent contractor, so they would technically be a 1099 worker, and you are paying them through your LLC. Not only do you get to write off that $12,000 as a business expense, but they also get to invest that into a Roth IRA. Like it's a win-win. Now they're going to have 12 years worth of a head start on their colleagues, and you can max out $12,000 you could give them because that's where that tax limit is, and then you can invest $6,000 into a brokerage Roth IRA, and then another one to an IRA. Not many children get to do that. Talk about setting up generational wealth.
Yeah.
That's critical. And then you can also put them on a mortgage as well and be like, hey, this is your college fund. When you become 18 years old, transfers from the adult's name into the little kiddo, and you can do with it whatever you want. It's been cooking and nesting for 18 years, so it's already cash flowing, or at least in theory it should. They get to sell if they want to and fund their college tuition, or they can just keep it and keep on letting that thing ride, or refinance at that point in time, buy another home with it, and still have a little bit to pay for college if they didn't want to join the military or get an FHA loan or any of the other stuff. So there are some ways you can plan for generational wealth right when you find out that, hey,
You're
there's
gonna have
about to be
kids.
another one in your
Yeah.
life. Yeah.
And I want to add on to that because there's going to be, because I personally didn't grow up in a family that had good credit, right? And it's all about like I give like, it's like the plane theory, right? You got to put on your own mask before you give it to the child.
Yep.
So
Mhm.
I always tell people, hey, even if you don't have like, even if your parents didn't have good credit, you can always, there's a technique, it's called buying trade lines. Basically you actually rent out someone else's, it's perfectly legal, okay? Is there's like a website where you do all this, banks do it as well. They basically, you find someone that has like, I'll give you my example. I basically 18 years old, I was like, hey, I really want to get this Chase credit card, right? And because I heard this is a really good credit card, I'm in the military and it's gonna get waived off. So I was like, okay, how can I get this? Because I only have 6 months of credit history. So what the trade line does is like, it's like pay to win. So I paid $600 to rent out someone's credit. Basically it's like they're being my parent. They're like, hey, this is my kid. He has 25 years of credit right now. I'm like, whoa, well, it averages out my 6 months theirs and divide that by two.
Okay.
It's a little less than that, but it's basically showing like, hey, this is here's a credit line with a 12 for 25 years. And boom, my credit shot up to like near like 780. And I was like,
That's
whoa.
awesome.
I was like, whoa, even though people are like, whoa, you spent $600 for that. But my goal was to get these credit cards because I'm just using debit cards to pay for whatever. I have like secured
Yeah.
credit cards, but they're like not worth it. And during that whole year, I probably got like, I got the Chase trifecta, got a bunch of American Express cards. And I was like, oh, wow, look, my credit line is like this now. It's like, it's big now, it's strong. It's very fortified. And I'm like, anything I purchase now, whether it's for business, my personal, I'm getting points for that. So I can go anywhere for free. Like, like if I want to go to like, to Hawaii, right? I can use my credit points and like go
Mhm.
there. And I'm like, whoa, like it was a win for me. Those $600 paid off because guess what? I just did this. And I also use that to get house loans, home loans. And if you just go to tradeline.com, you'll just see a bunch of those like trade lines up. I always recommend this for people like, hey, I know you probably have like parents that don't have good credit,
Mhm.
but you can utilize this. And sometimes after 3 months, it goes away, right? But the thing is, it doesn't go away, right? It stays there for another year as a closed account, and it still looks good
Yep.
on your credit. And I'm like, whoa, I've actually never thought of that because how many times is bank like? Let's be honest here, the government's kind of lazy. Like a lot of people, it's like they look into it, they're like, we'll take care of it later. Like if anybody that works for the government, they know that it's just a 9 to 5. They don't really like go in depth with it. They're not like hackers, FBI, and like they're going into all that information. They're like, no, they're not doing that. They're just like, if they check on you, they check on you. The only people that they do audit and do a lot of stuff is like people like Trump, people like Coca-Cola. Like these are like high like status companies. They're like they want to take their money, but like someone like that owns like 3 properties, 4 properties. They're not really gonna check you like that. So that's why it's like even if you did get audited, it's nothing bad. It's just that if you do everything right, it is that nobody's gonna check your credit. Like, oh, we should take that away, right? It happened to me. Like they're like 2 years later, they took it. I'm like, oh, well, that's because of my fault. I was doing a credit clean thing, right? I was cleaning all
Mhm.
my hard inquiries,
Yeah.
threw all that out. I'm like, whatever. I could just get another one and then look good again. But
Yeah.
I'm
To build off of what you were saying, for making sure that you don't get audited, the best thing to do, find a good CPA,
oh yeah.
because if you get audited, it's on them. They'll take care of it. And I was trying to do all the stuff myself, and the first time I went to the CPA, they were like, "Oh, honey," and they, I paid like $400 for their services. They got me back like $7,000 from previous year's taxes. Now the IRS, as you were saying, super slow. I just got that check 2 weeks ago, and I filed it a year ago. Like last October, I filed for it. So they will take their sweet time.
Oh yeah, they
You're
will. The government, they only care about their own money, not really like taking care of you. So it's like getting a good CPA is a wonderful thing. I'm like, I pay $200 a month for my bookkeeping. I'm like, this is the best thing I've ever done because
Oh yeah, well worth it.
now I'm not worried about it. And then in the future, once I get more stuff going on, I might get a very elite like tax strategist. Like, hey, buy this property and do this with this. I'm like, oh, dude, this one's not making as much money. Do a 1031 exchange. I'm like,
Mhm.
oh wow, that sounds cool. I'll do that.
And there's some services that in they do bookkeeping, they do tax strategy, they do tax filing and preparation in that all under one roof. And there's some that are specific for real estate.
Mhm.
I happen to use one and they are absolutely fantastic. We actually next week we're having another one of our strategy sessions, so
Wow.
it's absolutely wonderful.
Yeah. And I would also recommend like people, it's like dating, right? So go with someone that you like with the CPA. Don't
Mhm.
stick to one, because I remember when I first went to my CPA, like the first CPA I went to, she was old. She wasn't really doing us like, she wasn't occupied with me because she was busy with other people. So she didn't give
Yep.
me as much attention. And I was looking for referrals from other people, and they recommended
Mhm.
this one guy, and he's like 7 years older than me. He's like, it's like 29 or something. And,
Yep.
and I'm like, and we were like, hey, bro, can you help me out? He's like, yeah, dude, I got you. And then we were talking like, like we're young, right? He's like,
Yeah.
I'm not understanding this. Can you explain to me? Like, bro, if you bought this gold chain and this Ferrari, and like, he'll explain it to me in that terms. I'm like, bro, I like you. I'm gonna hire you. Let's do this,
Mhm.
right? And he saved me a crap ton of money. And he's like,
Oh yeah.
and they'll question you in a funny way, like, bro, what is this purchase right here? I'm like, oh, that's a business expense. He's like, how? I'm like, I don't know. Let's make it a business expense. I'm like, all right. And
Well, so like that's why I like how Robert Kiyosaki talks in his last book, Why the Rich Stay Richer, is
mhm.
because he always talks about, he's like, I have a Porsche problem. And I was like, what? I want a Porsche problem. What's this? And he was just like, look, I'll pay $50,000 for a Porsche. He's like, but I'm not going to pay $50,000 for a Porsche. I'm going to pay $50,000 for an asset that will in turn pay me $50,000 so I can afford the Porsche. That way I can have the asset and my Porsche, and then after the Porsche is paid off, which the asset's paying for, guess what? There's still that income coming in plus some appreciation and all the other silliness. So
Yeah.
Porsche
And
problem.
well, what action do you think people can take that can pay dividends for their future?
The biggest one is cutting out your household expenses. The typical American pays 30% or more, depending on where where you live, on housing.
Yeah.
So if you can hammer that away, like me, I hoard my home out. I had someone in the downstairs unit. I had one person in my other free room, and then I turned my living room into another room, and I installed sliding doors. And I was working that home for every single square foot it had. The most recent home that I was in, where I'm actually moving out of right now, I turned my spare room, because I was renting on one, so I had a roommate on one, and that took 50%. Actually, that took 60% of my total housing expenses
Mhm.
away. So I was like, cool, this is a 60% reduction. I'm a greedy asshole. I could do better. So that was my long-term war reserve strategy, 60%. And I was like, I'm going to try my hand at this Airbnb thing. So spent $3,000, spooled that room up. Yeah, I could have done it cheaper, but I'm bougie. And I spooled that up, and instantly, literally instantly, that one room by itself paid for my entire mortgage and then some, because not only was that paying for my entire mortgage, so I got an additional that additional 60% that I was getting from my other roommate. Now that's just income and profit. But I was at first able to deduct only 50% of my power, 50% of my utilities, 50% of my internet, because those are all services I provided. But now I got to notch that up to 66%, because 2/3 of my home was now rented out. So not only was I living for free, but now I got to deduct a lot more on my taxes. And because I'm a greedy bastard, the home that or the car that I got is an electric car, which means the power that I was providing, and I was running on, that's also a tax deduction as well, because that was as part of what I allowed my tenants and my Airbnb guests to use. So that is what I would say the first thing. Knock out that that housing expense. Just it's simply not worth it. And then if you can reduce your car or your transportation costs, do that. There's this thing called an electric bicycle. You know, you might get made fun of for it, but who cares in the grand scheme of things? I paid like $1,000 for my electric bike, and I pedaled my happy self to work every day. And guess this was in 2018. Pedaled myself to work every day. That cost me, $20 over the course of a few years because I blew a tire out. That's it. So I got to work and it's electric. So like I just felt okay. It kind of woke me up and I was ready to go for the day. Every once in a while when it rained, okay, I drove my car. But for the vast majority of the time, I was pedaling my bike, which means my transportation cost was down to nothing because my car was paid off at that time. So why run on dead dinosaurs and sitting in traffic getting all pissed off when you can just zip by them on your bike? Like, as long as you live within 6 to 7 miles from work, that's easy. So I would highly recommend doing that. It's a no-brainer. So right there, you can take away 50% or you can mitigate 50% of your expenses right there for the typical American. Just a subtle lifestyle change. That's all you need.
Wow, I like that because you're just figuring out ways to basically cut down in costs and anything. And I like that because I did that. I'm doing that still. I'm like, hey, how can I cut in this? Like for me, I'm trying to be like efficient in like protein and all that stuff. I'm like, I really don't want to cut in that. So let me just, again, like you said, get those oats, get those eggs, right? Stuff
Yeah.
that are cheap, and then you just like live on those, and then all you got to do is like the most thing I probably spend on are just books, right? I'm like,
Yeah.
that's the only thing that I buy. That's like, that's really cool. And I also
Yeah.
like invest back into the business. So if let's say I need a new mic, right? I'll buy that because I like doing the podcast. I like making YouTube videos. So I do all that for that. And
Yep.
what is an important lesson that you learned this year?
Oh, this has been a tough year for me, man. I've learned a lot of lessons. One, don't get a fingernail gouged into your eye. That gotta duck a little bit quicker. Oh, that was a long day. But for me, what I would say is be very, very careful with who you hang out with. It wasn't one of those things that like I suddenly learned it. I was slowly learning it over time, but I didn't realize it until very early on this year. Year being not 2022, but 365 days to date. Be very careful of who you hang out with. You're the sum total of your 5 closest friends, or the 5 people you spend enough time around. And if there's people who are negative, kick that out. But also find other crazy fuckers like yourself.
Yeah.
Like, I'm so fortunate to have found such a good real estate investing community in Fayetteville. Like that has fundamentally changed how I do several things. The second and third order effects are monumental. Seek those out because goddamn, like that network is key. You only have a few true resources. You have your time, you have your money, you have your attention, and you have your network. That network is key because you can learn from them, and also you can leverage them. It's a give and a take. Not saying you're here to do some verbal judo on everyone, or you're trying to monopolize upon them, but people are smart, and you have to be able to identify that and provide value to them, and they'll provide value to you. Find that network. Oh, it's so key.
Like that. And before we move on to the ending questions here, I'm gonna let these guys, if they have any questions. Dev, got any questions?
Yeah, man, I did, but as we were going through, man, you were answering them pretty well. So I appreciate
good.
your verbiage and the way you explain things, man. I really appreciate that.
Oh, good.
And
Glad to hear it.
but what I did miss is you said you went to the Air Force Reserve, and I think I missed that. Why did you say you got the Army? Well, I know why you got the Army, but like, why did you decide to switch to the reserves instead of just getting out?
Yep. Yep.
Um,
So that's a fantastic question. The main reason why I switched from the Air Force Reserve and I went to the Army, don't get me wrong, me going to the Army was single-handedly the dumbest thing I've ever done in my life. I in no way, shape, and or form should have done it. And the only thing that was truly that has benefited me outside of meeting a few key people that has changed my life is finding a real estate community. And I found that out in Fayetteville. They're absolutely fantastic. But outside of that and finding some personal friends who I'm actually going back and seeing, God, that was a dumb idea. But the reason why I went and did that is because I loved being a medical service corps officer. I absolutely loved it. I specialized in aeromedical evacuation, and I was like, God damn, like I loved doing it on my days off. And I was like, I just want to do this more. The Air Force is very political. And what they were telling me, they were like, hey, you have more than 8 years time in service. Doesn't matter that you have a bachelor's and master's degree in this field. Doesn't matter that you're already a captain in this field. It doesn't matter that you have literally taught the course in this field. You don't qualify for the job that we've taught you. You have all these, degrees and specializations in. You don't qualify because you have too much time in service. Now they have their reasons for that, but that was the reason why. I just wanted to get after it all the more. What I didn't fully grasp the magnitude of is the cultural difference between those two branches. The Air Force is very work smarter, not harder, and the Army is work harder, not smarter. And after I got back from my deployment, doing 16-hour days, when I got back from my deployment, I was like, no, bro, not doing this. You can take a long walk off a short plank. Now that did get me in trouble a little bit, but I was like, what are you gonna do in the grand scheme of things? Like, I'm not sacrificing my health for this. You can get fucked. So now, don't do as I do. Please listen to people above you, but there is a very healthy balance that I had to find for that.
Okay. Nice. You said before you joined the medical field, you were in the IT field, correct?
Yep.
Did you manage to get any IT certifications?
So I got my Security Plus certification, and that was like the main thing I got. And most people get their Security Plus certifications. That's as far as I went. I got my associates in that as well. What I would recommend if you are looking on staying in and getting your IT certifications, get your Cisco Certified Network Associate, your CCNA and CCNP. Definitely. Yep. Definitely get that. If you really want to go ham on it, there's a university. It's called Western Governors University, WGU, and get one of their networking degrees, because how they do it is you study for the certification, and you will graduate with 14 different certs. You study for your certification. You pass your certification, you get credit for the class next, and it's just rinse and repeat. Like I said, 14 different. Yes, you're talking CompTIA, you're talking your CCNA, and you're talking your Microsoft certified professionals, such as your MTA, to be your Azure certifications. It is insane. WGU. I cannot recommend it enough. I was fortunate enough to help mentor a few other individuals who took my advice, and they were able to get that. Each and every one of them now has an over 6-figure job because of that. Yeah, and these are like 22-year-old punks who got out, as like a E4. Now they're making 6 figures, and here I am like, you son of a bitch. I should listen to me.
Right. Because me and me and Haven are in the IT field, and we're interested in the certifications. And I am a transitioning service member, so I was just curious on that.
Yep. So, and if you ever need help, like I've transitioned out of the military now 3 times. I'm getting a PO card the next time. But like I actually have 15 days left in the military. I'm on my terminal leave right now. So if you have any other follow-up questions or anything, please feel free to reach out. I'm more than happy to help with that. Or if you have any other IT questions, because you can go more specific, and get like your CCIE, and then that's your doctorate in Cisco, if that's what
crazy.
you want to do, and you're getting into the coding and the syntax of it. Or what I did is I went on the general side. So I'm a project management professional. I'm a PMP. And that's what I do is I'm a healthcare information technology project management. And I work on linking healthcare systems and states together. And that's one, very rewarding, because the data flow that's going through, it's not just my healthcare, it's also my family's, it's my sister's, it's my grandma's. And it's very rewarding, and it's congressionally mandated, which means talk about job security. So if Congress says you have to have these capabilities, something to consider. Like I said, I went generalist. There's no wrong way to cut that pie.
I like that. I like that. Wow. And you said that college specifically, you basically work for the certifications and then you get the degree. Is that how it works?
Yeah. So I am summarizing it, but yeah, you study for your certification, and the capstone for that certification, or for the class, is the certification test. So when you get that cert, they're like, cool, you passed, you passed like wireless networking, blink, done. And then you just go on to your next one. And the cool thing is the faster you complete it, the cheaper it is. So you pay based on time, not based on class, which is super cool. Because if you really want to go ham, you can go ham, and it'll cost peanuts. If you want to really drag it out and go slow, that's going to cost you more. So your mileage will vary with that.
Nice.
I
love that.
Can you use your GI Bill with that?
Hell yeah, you could use your GI Bill.
Okay.
Hell yeah.
Excellent. Okay.
Yeah. I'm gonna call them up.
I paid literally nothing for my education.
I'm gonna call them up
Beautiful.
tomorrow morning. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Sami, go ahead with your question.
My question is, if you had to do it all over again, would you do anything differently, or would you just?
Yeah, I wouldn't join the army.
Did you take? How would you do it differently? You would say.
Good question on that. So, actually, if I was to do it all over again, my first duty station was in where was I? I was in Colorado, right? And sorry, I'm trying to mess with my light.
You're good. You're good. You look good. You look good.
Trust me, it's all lighting. My first duty station was in Colorado Springs, and I, being the smartest E3 ever, did not. So like, I did not buy a home, in which I should have, because I don't know if you have seen the home value of a 2008 Colorado Springs home versus a 2020 Colorado Springs home, but it's quadrupled in price.
Yeah.
And it's just downright stupid. For me though, what I did is I bought a sports car for $60,000. Everyone had to learn how awesome I was. So like I said, like if you could, no one can mess up more than me. And if my dumb ass can make it, anyone can. I have learned everything the hard way. But I wouldn't have bought the fucking sports car, man. I would have used that money, and I would have bought a home there. But what buying that sports car did do though was that really lit a fire under my ass, because I was like, holy shit, like my car payments were like $792 a month. I was like, oh my God, like talk about dumb. And what I did during my deployment was I was like, okay, I have a year and I have to unfuck myself. And so I spent that, because my first deployment was a 365, because why do a normal 9-month deployment? That's for nerds. So I used that time to learn. I read every single goddamn page on Bigger Pockets and Mr. Money Mustache and Motley Fool. Like I was chewing into it. I started getting into day trading, and I was moderately successful with that. And I was able to pay my car off and all that other good fun stuff. But don't buy a stupid ass car. Get a good investment, run the numbers, make sure the numbers work, and then execute. I know that's very situationally dependent, but ultimately don't be dumb. I wouldn't be dumb.
Yeah, I like that. And let's move on to the ending questions here. So if you can go back in time and tell your younger self something, what would it be?
Invest in Tesla stocks more.
There you go.
So I was very fortunate. I invested in Tesla when it was $34 a share.
What
It's now a sizable part of my portfolio. So yay. But in all honesty, though, like if I could go back in time and be like, look, fool, educate yourself on real estate, because real estate is one of the very few areas in life where you can use leveraged money. And
Yeah.
leveraged money is key, because I can turn $1 and I could have the income of $5. You just put down 20%, there you go. So I'm getting a substantial compounding return on my single dollar. Like no other industry I can think of can do that. And it's something you need to live with. So it's fairly passive. I personally love it. There's so many ways you can split it up too. Some people are into fix and flip, some people are into wholesaling, other people like they'll get their real estate licensure and they'll just refer people. That's all they do. They're the I know it guy, and they don't do anything besides, oh yeah, Bob will help you. They get a quarter of the commissions for saying, hey Bob, here you go. God damn. So
That's all it takes.
That's what I do. Yeah.
And what would you like to tell your or ask or tell your future self?
How's it all work out? Like we're cooking something good. At the end of the day, I don't think it would be an ask. I would hope that the grand scheme of what I'm trying to do, and that's just return the maximum amount of value to my investors. I just hope that happens.
Nice.
That's really it.
Okay. And what do you think the secret sauce to being successful is?
Being adaptable. You have to be adaptable no matter what. Like the triplex that I got, it was a hunk of shit, man. But with a little bit of discipline and a little bit of wherewithal, and adapting my overall strategy, now like on a pure monetarily income standpoint, it's one of my better units that I have. It just, I had to adapt to the situation. Just don't stop. That's the ultimate thing.
And is there a quote that you live by?
Unfortunately, no. I really need to have one. It used to be do hard things, and then someone poked my eyeball out. So now I don't want to really say I want to do hard things anymore. I'm looking for a new one. If you have any, please let me know.
Mine is just keep moving forward. That's my company's thing. So I'm like, just keep moving forward. I kind of stole that from Meet the Robinson. Because ever since I was a kid, I would always love that movie. I'm like, what is it about this movie? And it's just like the main character, he always like, oh, you just got to keep moving forward no matter what. So even if you're struggling, if you're going through hard times, you got to keep moving forward. That's it.
Oh yeah, I like that. I'm going to steal that from you.
Go ahead. I don't mind. Well, so what books would you recommend for certain situations or parts of life or real estate or whatever?
Okay, so that's actually pretty fantastic. Here's 5 main books that I would say. Hitting off number 1, Rich Dad Poor Dad. Obviously, Why the Rich Get Richer by Robert Kiyosaki. Millionaire Next Door. Those are the ones that everyone has, right? And there's a reason for that. They are fantastic. What I would say is also, I absolutely love A Vivid Vision. It's a fantastic book, and that's more if you're business minded and trying to identify where your business is going. That is fantastic. I highly recommend it. Another one is why am I drawing a blank on it right now? It's such a good book. I actually loaned it out to a few of my cousins. It is
what is it about?
It's tax loopholes for the real estate investor. It's on the Bigger Pockets website. It's tax strategies for the real estate investor and advanced tax strategies for the real estate investor. Those are absolutely amazing books. I love them to death. definitely recommend it. Please tell me you have it.
I got them right here. I got both of
Yeah,
them right here.
buddy. Yeah. I've chewed through those. Like, it's old, it's worn. There's notes and everything. Like, I go to my CPA and I sat down and I put these books on it. I'm like, we're gonna go through these strategies line by line, and asset by asset, and we're gonna plan out the next year and a half. Highly recommend those.
Nice. Love it. And is there any like philosophical books you would also recommend?
So I don't really dig into philosophical books all that much. I do like Sapiens and Homo Deus.
Okay.
Those are fantastic books. And actually, Sapiens is on Warren Buffett's top 5 books to read. So definitely recommend. And that's just about the human condition and how we've gotten to where we are. It is a fantastic book, especially if you want to fall asleep at night. Like, it's boring, but at the same time, it's so intriguing. It is such a weird juxtaposition.
Nice. And before we move on to the last 2 questions, we got a thing here, a segment. It's called Spin the Wheel, right? And
Okay.
I'll spin it for you. Let's see what you get.
All right.
All right. What was your favorite cartoon as a kid?
Oh, geez, my favorite cartoon. What was it? It was Static Shock.
Static Shock.
Yeah, I love Static Shock. Oh man, I used to. Was it on the WB4 and Saturday morning 9 a.m. like that? That's where I was. Whether you're that or Saturday morning 9 a.m. boxing class, one of the two. Loved it. Absolutely loved it.
Man, someone that says Static Shock. Okay. Oh wow.
Shit.
He's not my favorite superhero. I'll tell you that after. Like I wouldn't even think him. Oh no, I'm good with
What?
him.
What? Oh, this is done.
And
it.
second to last question: is there anything that you would like to tell your mother or father?
Yeah, thanks for always having my back. I know that some of my decisions are perplexing at times, but they usually work out, except for joining the army.
Yeah. Oh, now you got stories to tell wherever you
Oh,
go.
dude, there's a lot.
And lastly, how can people reach out to you?
Oh my goodness. So you can reach out to me on Instagram at OCR_Odell. I did also just recently open up a Twitter account.
Wow.
It's called investing with Tim with 2 underscores. And the reason for that is actually because I'm going to start to be producing content, because I just moved to the Rochester area, and well, they don't have like a lot of real estate meetup groups. And I was like, well, I'm going to make one then.
Yeah.
In order to get all of the get the word out there, I'm actually going to be chewing into how I selected each one of my homes, how I selected all of my real estate agents, how I ran the numbers on my homes, how did I structure all of that, what does the numbers look like for that, and then what is my exit strategy is going to be. So that in and of itself, that's 26 different episodes that's going to happen. We're going to go into some pretty serious detail with it. And then we'll be analyzing some more of like the apartment complexes that we're going to be looking at. It's going to be a good time. But I'm doing all that so I can get the word out there. That way people can come to my real estate meetup and we'll talk about houses and stuff. Who knows?
And not a lot of people know about that. You're also a Spartan racer. And
yeah,
that's fucking epic. I'm like, this dude, he's doing a lot of things. He's on here.
Yeah. I did actually that's what this shirt is, a Spartan shirt. But yeah, I was in Vermont 2 weeks ago, and I ran Mount Killington. It was like a 6,000 foot change of elevation. My calves are still hurting. Sorry, that was last week. My calves are still hurting. And I got a 30 miler coming up in the 22nd of October. So
wow,
gotta be training for that. Yeah.
Wow, you're just a beast in general. Well, it's good having you here, Tim. And we'll see you next time. And thank you for coming to the podcast.
Thanks for the invite. It was great talking with you. Have a good one.
You too.